Hey Nerd Faithful, this is Rick from The Big Bang Life. I'm here at JordanCon 7 with best-selling author Todd McCaffrey. Todd McCaffrey is probably most well known for co-authoring with his mother, the late Anne McCaffrey, with the Dragon Riders of Pern series. Todd, thanks for being here today. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to meet you.
Thank you.
So, first question probably is, so what was it like growing up in with a parent who had already captivated fans actually for 50 years in the making?
Well, actually, it wasn't like that. I was 14 when we moved to Ireland, and really fame didn't come until the Harper Hall trilogy took off, and really the turning point was The White Dragon getting on the New York Times bestseller list. So there was a lot of lean years in there. My sister once famously said, "Gee, Mom, wouldn't it be nice if we could eat pancakes for dinner because we wanted them?" It can be really rough. But finally, she kept on doing what she loved, and it paid off.
You guys actually did a whole lot of movies when you were a kid.
I guess so. I was born in Montclair, New Jersey, but I only stayed there for 2 years, so I don't remember anything. Then we were in Delaware until I was 9, and then in Seacliff, Long Island, until I was 14. Then in Ireland for the first 4 years, we were moving every year. We were renting places. But it was nice. We got to be very good at moving. We also, the second place we rented was a then 230-year-old Georgian mansion, which is now closer to 270 years old. We don't see as much history here in the States as we do in Ireland. But finally, she got to a point where her dragons could actually provide her with a down payment on a house, which is where she got the original Dragonhold, which would be the house that my sister and myself considered to be our big Irish house. What everybody knows is Dragonhold Underhill was actually built later after we've moved out. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, when you started writing, how did you receive instruction? Did Mom kind of give you guidance, or did you go to school for it? Or
we all tell stories. We tell stories about our stories and how we got to tell our stories. The stories all change. I was writing as a kid. I earned my first typewriter by learning how to touch type so I could write stories at age 12, 13. So that goes back, a long way. Mom was very reticent about reading my stuff or giving me any feedback on it, and I once really begged her to do it, and what I got back was a bloody corpse full of red ink all over the place. It was the last time I asked. My education, I was writing science fiction and fantasy and anything I could in my English class, but I was in Ireland at the time. I had a teacher who said, "Don't kiss the Blarney Stone, you've already got the gift of the gab." And he was quite willing, he'd provide assignments, and I said, "Could I write about whatever?" And he was like, "Sure," because his problem was getting people to write, except me, which was getting me to stop writing, or to get me to not write so long. So it worked out pretty well. Then in 1992, on the advice of a friend, I went up and did the Clarion West Writers Workshop, which really helped. That's the 6 weeks intense writer boot camp, where you're writing a story a week and critiquing 19 other stories a week. You learn a lot about the craft then.
So, another thing I found interesting, and I could be inaccurate about this, but I do know that Todd McCaffrey was a name you took on later on in life. It was written. Todd Johnson was another pen name that you used?
No, Todd Johnson is my given birth name.
Your given birth name?
I have no middle initial. I met a very nice lady whom I eventually married, and when it came time to talk about being married, she didn't really want to be, as she called it, Emma Johnson. So we decided we'd go for a new last name, and on the request of Scott McMillan, a genealogist on bended knee begging me to please take some name that's actually in my family history because future genealogists would go nuts if not otherwise. I really honestly had no sympathy for these future genealogists, but ultimately I canvassed around and asked my uncle, who was the leading holder of the McCaffrey name at the time, if he minded if I took it on as a last name. And he was okay with that, so I went with McCaffrey, which turned out to be a wise move when it came to actually writing on Pern and things like that, right. So people would find us all grouped in the same place in the bookstore, and not have to go look all over Robin Hood's barn to find the next Pern book. So.
But under your original name, Todd Johnson, you wrote some military-based novels, if I'm not mistaken?
The first, well...
And you actually served in the military.
Well, those are two different, two different things. Yes, I was 4 years in the U.S. Army in Germany, and was an armored cavalry, well, basically was a scout, and enjoyed it. But I wrote Military SF because I was thrown this opportunity to write a Chosen Path book or a Choose Your Own Adventure book based on David Drake's Hammer Slammer series, which I loved. So it was kind of like, oh yes, throw me in that briar patch. At the same point, I was given a couple of other chances to write in various, I got to write in the Bolo universe, which was one of my other favorite universes. The Keith Lombard Bolo series with the super tanks, and I had a lot of fun with that. This was basically because of Bill Fawcett. Bill Fawcett is one of these unsung heroes in science fiction. He's done a lot of packaging over the years. And he was responsible, or part responsible, for the Dragon Riders of Pern board game, which is where I first met him. And because I was a big gamer, Mom assigned me the job of being liaison with Mayfair Games when they were doing it. And Bill, wisely, sagely, got me to write Thread Fighting Tactics on Pern, which was later incorporated into the Dragon Lover's Guide to Pern, as something that was thrown into the advanced booklet as background stuff for the board game. And that's sort of where it all started. I was once on a panel at LostCon with Tim Powers and Armin Shimmerman and Will Wheaton and myself, and Will was stuck in between Armin and myself, and the question was, well, how did you get published? And I'd said something like nepotism, having a parent in the industry, and Armin said, well, actually it's because of Bill Fawcett, because he had done some, basically sort of Quark-ish spin-offs. And I turned around and said, well, actually, yeah, it was because of Bill Fawcett that I got into writing as well. And Will Wheaton writes down in his little notepad, no Bill Fawcett. So that's really, that's the secret of getting into writing, is you got to know Bill Fawcett.
Gotcha. So you co-authored several books with your mother, and I think you wrote 2 independent works?
We co-authored 5, and I wrote 3.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun. It's very interesting. My mother usually tended to write without an outline, but when you co-author, you can't do that. You kind of have to know where you're going. If one of you is going to be writing part of the book, the other one has to know at least where to pick up the reins, and you all have to agree where it's going to go. She let me be the person who handled all the copy editing and editing, so I was in at the hard sticky end of it, and she'd done that enough. So that worked out really well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Was it exciting being able to actually do a lot of this work with your mom?
Well, there's a story behind that. Way back when, in '92, I think it was, somewhere around there, Mom's editor asked me to consider writing a sort of biography of Mom, to keep Mom from writing a biography so she'd write more Pern books. And that was the birth of something known as Dragonholder, the life and dreams so far of Anne McCaffrey. It was a lot of fun. I got to interview her and get information from her about the book, learn stuff about my mother I didn't know. And while we were doing that, we said, gee, it'd be really nice to do a collaboration. I said to her, I'd always wondered what it'd be like if you had a situation where you had 2 riders and 1 dragon. Like one dragon died saving the other, and the bond moved over, and you had now 2 riders and the 1 dragon. And she kind of liked that idea, and she wanted to see about what would happen, this is after all the Weirs of Pern, so what would happen if perhaps an asteroid crashed onto Pern and caused a major tidal wave? And I got late working on Dragonholder, and I get a call from her, and I'm living in Los Angeles, in the middle of the night going, "I can't kill the dragon!" I'm going, "What? I can't kill the dragon!" I said, "Well, dear, if you don't want to kill the dragon, you don't have to kill the dragon." And that is the first that I'd learned that my mother was actually writing the supposed collaboration that became The Skies of Pern. And she didn't kill the dragon. So afterwards, when we had a chance to collaborate, we really swung at it with Dragon's Kin and so on. So, but there are longer stories behind that even. It's, as I say, the stories we tell about the stories we write are varied all the time.
So, your mom passed away in 2011, and my sympathies to you. Obviously, you had a very close relationship, riding together, and probably being as a family. What was one thing that your mom probably instilled in you, encouraged you with, maybe gave you a mantra to live by that kind of inspired you to write and, carry on the legacy of Pern?
I wouldn't say that Mom left a mantra or any inspiration to carry on the legacy of Pern. It's a gift. I'm not the only one. There are two people in Mom's will that are allowed to write on Pern, me and my little sister, who will also be writing under the McCaffrey name, even though she never was, and is now married to a Kennedy. But just to keep it consistent, we'll see something from either Georgianne, which is her given name, or Gigi McCaffrey, hopefully sometime in the near future. But the thing about Pern and what made it work so well, I think more than anything, was that Pern was about a world where women were equal with men, or were becoming equal with men. And I had actually kind of hoped that we would be past that point. We'd be at a time in our society when that was the case, and people would be bored reading about it. It hasn't happened yet. So there's still that part of it. Turns out that there's a lot of unexplored history in Pern, some of it dark, and there's a lot of chances to tell stories in Pern that are still relevant to today. So with that regard, it's a great thing. There are people who, there's the lure of that amazing bond between a rider and a dragon. There's the clean fight against Thread. It's, you don't have to worry about killing Thread. You don't have to apologize to its mother. You don't have to worry that you might be upsetting or orphaning some poor baby Thread somewhere. You just kill them. Otherwise, they're going to take your planet away from you. That's it. So that's a nice, clean sort of, almost a Battle of Britain. They were, the few against the many sort of fight, which is really cool. So there's a lot of room on Pern. There's a lot of room in some of Mom's other universes to tell great stories. One of the things that she did, not so much teach, but she just always left, and it became easy to notice it, is she would finish her stories. You had Dragonflight, but there would be questions left afterwards. Well, what about? In Dragon Quest, we have the ancient rooms being discovered by Falessen and Jackson. And so Dragon's Blood became the answer to why were there ancient rooms in Bendenware, which is the second Weir, rather than in Fort Weir, which is the first Weir. Mom always left great questions behind, and I've carried that tradition on. That there's stuff that you want to know the answers to, so there's more stuff to read. The one thing, if there's a mantra with my mother, it would have been, don't just pay a favor back, pass it on. And in that, she works with the writers of the future to pass it on. And I have since become a judge of the writers of the future, and that's kind of the way we pass it on.
Amazing. Now, one thing I really wanted to do, and I emailed you about this, was I really wanted to read about a book that you wrote independently. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to read your novel, The City of Angels. Mm-hmm. And from what I could tell, it's a kind of a near future science fiction novel that focused around artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Maybe you can go a little deeper and kind of what inspired you to write that.
Well, it was more targeted originally as a science thriller, but the thriller market had a hard time grappling with it, so it's probably going to be sold more as science fiction. It's not strictly science fiction because, as you say, it's near term.
Yeah.
There were a couple things with that story idea. I've had that idea since '96 or so.
Your mom said if you didn't write it, she would, I think.
Yeah, yeah. She actually won. Was down in New Orleans for the Margaret A. Edwards Lifetime Literary Achievement Award in young adult fiction, and I was down there to cheer her on, and I told her about this idea I had. And that's when she said, if you don't write it, I will. And 10, 12 years, well, just before she died, she actually got to read it. And she said, I think you've got a blockbuster on your hands. And I said, well, can I use that in a blurb? And she says, but I'm your mother. So we haven't used it in a blurb.
So are there plans for any sequels to City of Angels?
Yes, depending upon how many sales. I mean, City of Angels right now is self-published. There are publishers, it's being sent out to publishers. As I say, we tried the thriller market. I was originally thinking it'd want to fit in someplace like maybe Da Vinci Code or the Tom Clancy Red Storm Rising, Hunt for Red October area. But they haven't, the publishers haven't been biting on that. It may go out as a science fiction novel. If the sales get good enough, I have some ideas for sequels to it. 3 sequels in the series. And maybe more after that, depending on how things go.
Well, I sure do hope so, because I really loved the first one, and it kind of it left it open, like right at the end.
Yeah.
It was just a major cliffhanger, and I was like, oh, I hope there's like a sequel to this, because it was really, really good.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, no, I think I know what's going to happen in the second book. It's sort of in my head. I know what's going to happen in the third book a little bit less, and in the fourth book even less. But I think, it annoys me. This book's been available for a while now, and now we're getting a whole bunch of artificial intelligence movies out that take the problem from a very different point of view. And there's a lot of Frankenstein monster routine going on, which is, Hollywood lives by selling fear more often than not, and that's what they're doing. This is not a book about fear.
Do you have any other planned works coming out soon?
I have things marching around looking for publishers that want to sell them. Just finished a rewrite on a nice alternate history. My heroine invents a steam walking machine just when Bonnie Prince Charlie comes into her hometown of Edinburgh. And of course, all history will break loose after that. Things will get very interesting. Then I also, a long time ago, Mom's lawyer, who's actually now the executor of the estate, Jay Katz, said, how come there aren't any good science fiction books with lawyers in them, he being a lawyer? And I said, So I thought of an idea and worked on it and gave up on it for a while, kids and other things. But recently when I was saying, maybe I should just throw this 30,000 word tidbit out, I went back and said, I actually think I can finish this. So I have something that tentatively is titled The Jupiter Game, which is also out looking for publishers. The Jupiter Game is aliens have actually been seeing us and watching us and stealing our ideas for a long time. We're just about to catch them at it, so they're going to try and do one big con to grandfather everything they stole from us. Unfortunately, one of the things we send back for is not so much a lawyer, but a politician, an American politician. Yeah. And life gets interesting, so it's kind of a giant caper.
Nice.
And it itself can open up a whole new universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That sounds really, really interesting. I hope that
we'll see it one way or the other. We'll see it soon.
Absolutely. What, as an author, you've been doing this writing for a long time. What do you think it takes to make a good book? I know it's a very simple question, but it can be very complex at the same time.
It's yeah, no, You can answer that 20,000 ways. I mean, at the end of the day, it's good characters in a good situation, in an interesting problem. It's something that appeals to all of us. The more broader you can make the appeal, the better the chance that the book is going to find a wider audience. You know, really at the end of the day, though, for me, it's the situation and the characters. You know, and tell a good story. That's all that's necessary. No problem. Just make it a New York Times #1 best-selling book. You know, don't worry about anything. No pressure.
Any words of wisdom to any potential up-and-coming authors or just people that like to write for a hobby?
Several. #1, if you are able to write short fiction, and if you aren't, you should challenge yourself. Seriously consider submitting to the Writers of the Future. You can submit for free once a quarter. The deadline dates are, I just memorized them, July 1st, October 1st, January 1st, April 1st. That's 4 times a year. You get the best money for the length of fiction you're writing. Orson Scott Card says so, so I'm pretty sure he might know. It's a great way to break into the industry. It moves you immediately out of the slush pile of wannabes into the you are a published author realm. Even if you don't sell anything, even if you are not selected, if you're writing 4 times a year at least, 4 short stories, then after a number of years you build the credentials to truly become a great author. Kevin Anderson set a goal of submitting once a quarter to Writers of the Future, and he did it 15 times, and then the last time he was no longer eligible because he was a published author. So I would highly recommend that. The other thing, the best piece of advice I've heard from a multitude of authors now is, you know, beyond talent, the next thing you need is persistence. Don't give up. Never give up. Don't ever give up. Don't give up. Keep at it.
Well, Todd, it's been a pleasure to be able to see you here today. I know I've been trying to hunt you down and stuff. We've been running into each other a little bit, but it was an absolute pleasure to be able to interview you.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you a little bit more at the con.
Okay.
And where can fans look at some of your stuff or get some of the books?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because there's shameless plug time. The #1 shameless plug I would put out there right now, it's only a short story of mine, but it's a lot of other good short stories, is Fantasy for Good. It's a charity fantasy. The reason I recommended Jay Lake is one of the contributors. Jay Lake, as we know, just lost his life to colorectal cancer, and all the money from this charitable thing goes to the colorectal cancer research. So it's a chance to save other people from dying the way Jay Lake died. And I've got a short story in it with dragons, but they're not pern dragons, they're talking dragons called Golden. Also, in a similar charity vein, Kevin Anderson at one point challenged everybody. He said, I can never get anybody to write a purple unicorn story for my anthology, which he didn't have at the time. And I said, okay, and sent him the story the next day. And as he said, I really don't have an anthology. But later on, he's been doing something called the Superstars Writing Seminars, which is the business end of writing, and very nicely done. So he set up a charitable anthology to raise money to provide scholarships to this. And the anthology is One Horn to Rule Them All, the Purple Unicorn Anthology. And I have not only the first story in it, but the last story in it. They are actually bookends on each other. So there's my 2 big shameless plugs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, is there a website that they can go to?
The website, the famous website, the best website to go find me is Todd McCaffrey, McCaffrey.org. And that's my home website. You can catch it a couple of other ways. You can find toddmccaffrey.us. Still have to spell McCaffrey, though. But you'll find me. I come up fairly quickly if you Google Todd McCaffrey, oddly enough. Yeah, but you know, so that's probably the best way to find me. Also, if you go there, you can actually sign up for a newsletter, which I send out semi-regularly, which will give you the latest issues and information on which conventions I'm going to be doing, which stories have come out, and so on. And also what's going on with the movie.
great
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, you didn't know about the movie?
No, I didn't.
Ah, okay. So, Pern has been optioned on and off in various guises for 30 years now. The latest option just happened November, I guess, somewhere around there. Last year, Warner Brothers has picked up the option for a film for Pern. And there's a writer attached to it now, which means we can cross fingers and hope things will happen. But as I say, it's been 30 years going back and forth with people saying, let's make this film. So we'll see, you know. Nothing, until you're sitting there with your popcorn sitting in front of the screen and it opens screen titles, don't count it. But we hope.
We will keep our fingers crossed. And Todd, it was an absolute pleasure working with me today with this interview.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you at the rest of the con.
Yep.
And thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you. All right. All right, Nerd Faithful, thanks a lot. We'll see you later.